Jackson simply didn't know what to do next. He tried to persuade his wife Tara to go to individual therapy, but she refused. He tried to get her to go to couples therapy together, but she again refused. He even asked her family to talk to her, but that too was to no avail. Every time he or her family brought up the issue, Tara simply said she was fine and went about her business. A month earlier, Tara had experienced the loss of her first pregnancy. Tara was a woman whose beauty attracted the gaze of others. She was 5 feet 5 inches tall, which is about 165 centimeters in the metric system, and weighed about 140 pounds, that is, about 63 kilograms. These parameters gave her figure proportionality, complementing her natural charm. Her thick brown hair is always cut neatly to her shoulders, with soft curls slightly curled, giving her look a relaxed and feminine look. Her hair contrasted beautifully with her bright blue eyes, which resembled a clear spring sky. The eyes were expressive, and in their depths one could read a mixture of intelligence and subtle, restrained emotion. In appearance, she was a little reminiscent of actress Amanda Peet, which sometimes caused her slight embarrassment when friends mentioned it. Tara paid attention to her health and physical fitness. She regularly worked out in the gym, which was located at the country club, of which her older sister was a member. Tara not only trained, but also found in these activities a way to relax after a busy day. She preferred functional exercises, cardio, and flexibility classes to keep herself in shape. She always looked elegant in the gym, wearing simple but stylish sportswear that reflected her self-confidence. Tara's professional life has been equally impressive. She served as a senior project manager for North American United Industries, a major company known for its cutting-edge designs and large-scale projects. Her job required a high level of responsibility, the ability to manage a team and make important decisions under time pressure. Tara approached her responsibilities with exceptional pedantry, but at the same time knew how to maintain a friendly atmosphere in the team. Her colleagues valued her not only for her professionalism, but also for her ability to find a common language with a wide variety of people. Tara lived in a world where severity and gentleness, a business-like approach and sincerity were skillfully combined. There was harmony in her appearance and way of life, which aroused respect and sincere interest among those around her. Jackson was a man of impressive height, 6 feet, which is approximately 183 centimeters. He weighed about 180 pounds, or about 82 kilograms, giving him an athletic and toned figure. Thanks to his active lifestyle, he maintained excellent physical shape, and his broad shoulders and strong physique only emphasized his strength and endurance. Jackson has always strived for a balance between health, activity, and pleasure, and his daily routine reflects this philosophy. 3 times a week, he devoted himself to exercise in his home gym. The space, equipped with everything he needed, became for him not just a place to train, but also a kind of refuge where he could concentrate and relieve stress. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, Jackson did intense training on a stationary bike. These activities allowed him to maintain his cardiovascular system in excellent condition and also develop endurance. He set goals for himself, for example, to cover a certain number of kilometers in an hour, and he always achieved them, finding special joy in this. An equally important part of his training regimen was jogging. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, Jackson would put on his favorite running shoes and head outside to run 5 miles, which is about 8 kilometers. His route passed through picturesque surroundings, quiet streets with neat houses, green parks, and paths along the stream. While running, he enjoyed the fresh air and sounds of nature, which helped him take his mind off the hustle and bustle and organize his thoughts. Each run was not just exercise for Jackson, but also an opportunity to recharge. Jackson considered Sundays his well-deserved day of rest. It was his personal pleasure day, when he allowed himself to forget about training and just enjoy life. He loved to spend this day watching football matches, sitting on a cozy sofa in the living room. This was his ritual, which was invariably accompanied by ordering pizza from his favorite pizzeria. Its appetizing smell and crispy crust created the very atmosphere of comfort that he appreciated. At such moments, he could completely relax, forgetting about his strict rules and training. For Jackson, this rhythm of life was ideal. Being active 6 days a week with a day of complete rest allowed him to maintain energy, health, and good spirits while not forgetting the simple pleasures of life. Jackson and his best friend Joseph founded a network computer security company called American Network Security Systems. Jackson was more interested in and knowledgeable about security and computers, while Joseph, being more outgoing and friendly, was involved in meeting with clients. Their duo made them great co-owners. Their work together has made American Network Security Systems one of the best in the country, winning contracts with public and private enterprises throughout the country from New York to Los Angeles. When Tara suffered a pregnancy loss, their world seemed to collapse. Jackson, understanding the depth of his wife's pain, decided to take a leave of absence to be with her during this difficult period. He knew that her condition required not only physical but also emotional support, and he was ready to put aside all his affairs for her sake. Jackson spent almost all his time with Tara, trying to surround her with warmth and care. He held her when she cried, whispered words of comfort, trying to ease her suffering a little, even if it was not easy for him. However, things don't always go smoothly. The pain of loss made Tara incredibly vulnerable and hot-tempered. There were times when she lost her patience, taking out her frustrations and anger on Jackson. Sometimes she blamed him, saying that he did not understand her pain, and sometimes she remembered his family in rage, finding a reason to reproach them for something completely insignificant. These outbursts of emotion were quickly replaced by sobs that seemed to dry her up from the inside. Jackson, despite the complexity of the situation, tried to remain calm. He did not argue, did not prove that he was right, but simply stayed close, hoping that his patience and love would help her find a path to healing. Tara, however, gradually withdrew into herself. She stopped being interested not only in her hobbies and usual activities, but also in Jackson. It seemed to her that no one could understand her grief, and any attempts by loved ones to get her out of this state only irritated her. She spent most of her time in a chair in the living room, just staring into space. Her eyes, once full of life, now seemed dull, and her face expressed only deep fatigue. She refused to meet with friends and barely communicated, even with her family. Jackson felt Tara leaving him emotionally, but didn't know how to get her back. Their sex life practically disappeared. Although she had not been particularly intense before, Tara had never been interested in anything unusual or experimenting. There was now complete silence in their relationship. Week after week, month after month, they hardly touched each other, and this distance, invisible but tangible, kept them further and further apart. Jackson tried to suppress his own feelings of dissatisfaction and confusion, not wanting to complicate the situation. One night, when he, unable to bear it anymore, decided to engage in self-satisfaction in the shower, something happened that he never expected. Tara entered the bathroom and started screaming when she saw him. Her anger was so sudden and furious that Jackson was dumbfounded. She accused him of being selfish, of seeking consolation at such moments instead of thinking about her. For Tara, this became a kind of emotional explosion, a long-awaited release of accumulated grievances and pain. Their screams drowned out the sound of the water, but the meaning was clear. She felt abandoned, despite Jackson's best efforts. This conflict, one of the few during their entire marriage, shocked both of them. After the argument, Tara went to the guest room and locked herself in there. All night long, her quiet, heartbreaking sobs could be heard from behind the door. Jackson sat in his bedroom, feeling as if his heart was being torn apart. He didn't know what to do, how to find the right words to help her. He barely slept a wink that night, and there was a heaviness in the air between them that could not be dispelled by a simple apology. After 6 weeks, Tara decided it was time to go back to work. Jackson supported her decision. He also began working several days a week while Tara slept. He hoped that returning to the daily routine before the loss of the child would start the recovery process and bring relief. He thought, "It can't get any worse." The first few days of her return to work went pretty well. She returned home and talked about her day. She seemed to be really trying to open up and start talking. On the second day, she even cooked dinner. It was just tuna pasta salad, but it was the first time in months that she had cooked something. They washed the dishes together and even splashed themselves with water a little. That night they lay in bed, hugging each other. However, by the end of her second week at work, Tara was back to her old self. She again didn't want to talk any more than necessary. She again began to just sit and stare into space. This time, when Jackson suggested she see a therapist again, she got angry. They quarreled. He tried to explain to her that their marriage was suffering, and he just wanted to help. Tara just screamed at him, repeating over and over again that she needed more time and to be left alone. Over the next few months, nothing changed for the better. Jackson and her family continued to encourage her to get help. Her sister Patricia and her husband Bill tried to convince Tara to stop pushing Jackson away. They suggested they go on vacation together so she could disconnect from everything, remember why she loved him, and try to fix their marriage. However, Tara again rejected all offers. Ultimately, Jackson got tired of the constant problems with Tara and everything that came with it. So when a client called with an urgent request, he took the opportunity to fly to another city and personally address the problem. He flew out on Friday morning after Tara left for work. He spent all day Friday and Saturday fixing the problem. Instead of staying at the hotel another night, he decided to spend the night on the plane since the flight home was scheduled for 5 in the morning. When Jackson returned home on Sunday morning at 8:30, he noticed that Tara was not home. He put his things away and went to take a shower. After getting out of the shower and getting dressed, he saw that she was still not there. He called her sister Patricia. She told Jackson that Tara was at her house, but was now sleeping in the guest bedroom. Jackson asked Patricia to have Tara call him back when she woke up. They talked for a few minutes about work, and he hung up. Jackson made himself breakfast and had just sat down to eat when his phone rang. It was his brother-in-law, Bill. He said that he and Patricia invited Tara to a summer party at a country club where they were members. There she had too much to drink and started dancing dirty with some man whom neither he nor Patricia knew. Bill said that on the way home they both chastised her for her behavior. Jackson thanked Bill for his honesty and for telling him where she was and why she didn't come home. Tara never called back, but returned home a little before noon. She looked like she'd been drinking all night. Jackson followed her into their bedroom, trying to talk to her, but she brushed him off as she undressed and went into the bathroom. He sat down on the windowsill with a soft seat, closed his eyes, took a few deep breaths, and began to pray, asking God to help him get through this moment. When he heard the sound of water running in the shower, Jackson stood up and decided to check her clothes. There were no stains or marks on her underwear. The clothes smelled of her perfume and her own scent, which brought him some relief. He then went into the bathroom and asked Tara if she wanted to eat. She replied that she had already eaten at her sister's. Jackson simply nodded and went downstairs. He turned on the TV and was watching the pre-match recap when Tara came downstairs. She sat down on the chair and looked at Jackson. He waited for the commercial and turned off the sound on the TV. He asked her if she had a good time. She smiled a little and said yes, and that she wished he were there with her. He asked where she went. She told the truth. He asked what she was doing there. She replied that she didn't remember everything, but she remembered dancing a lot with a client from work. She admitted that Patricia and Bill were unhappy with her behavior and made it clear to her. They watched a football match together at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and talked about the emergency work that required him to go on a business trip. They discussed his work and her work. Tara apologized for what happened and for not calling before returning home. At 4 o'clock, Jackson called and ordered pizza as usual. Tara wanted a small pizza like his, but with added mushrooms. They sat at dinner and watched the second match of the day. At 7:30, Jackson was washing the dishes he'd gotten dirty while preparing breakfast when Tara came up behind him and hugged him. She took his hand and led him to the bedroom. Afterwards, they lay next to each other, and then she pressed herself against him and began to cry. Jackson simply hugged her and kissed her on the head. They fell asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, she woke him up, again initiating intimacy. Afterwards, they showered together and cooked a great breakfast. Over the course of several days, their relationship became warmer. They dined together, spent evenings talking and being intimate. Tara said for the first time in a long time that she loved him. Jackson felt that things were finally starting to look up, and they had a chance to repair their marriage. But the next day, he returned from work to find Tara on the couch in tears, holding ultrasound pictures. What started as an act of comfort quickly escalated into screaming, accusations, and aggression on her part. She locked herself in the bedroom again, and he spent the night in the guest room. Over the next month, everything went in a vicious circle. Jackson would come home and either find Tara crying or be confronted with her irritation and short answers. She increasingly blamed him for all her misfortunes. He continued to suppress his emotions, trying to help Tara, but she refused to cooperate. She wanted nothing more than to go to work, come home, and push him away. Jackson let his emotions out through training. He began to study more intensely than ever. Sometimes he would take a shower and let his feelings wash over him, cry. But then he would pull himself together again, get dressed, and try to talk to Tara. And again he received only cold rejection from her. One Friday morning, Joseph called Jackson and said his sister was going into labor with complications and he needed to stay in the hospital. He asked Jackson to hold a morning meeting with one of his biggest clients who had flown in to discuss a contract renewal. Jackson has replaced Joseph at similar meetings more than once. Although he was not a social person, he always managed through careful preparation. Arriving at Joseph's office, Jackson took his notes while company employees Sheila and Beverly began preparing the conference room with drinks, donuts, and muffins. The meeting began after everyone had signed non-disclosure agreements. Jackson used Joseph's notes to become familiar with those present and their interests. He talked about a new program he was working on, how it could be implemented in stages without interrupting service, and how it would save the client money. He answered questions and even made the audience laugh with a couple of good jokes. At the end, he gave a 10-minute presentation of the results of the beta test of the program and reminded them that their company provides 24/7 support and, if necessary, sends teams to the site wherever the client is located. When the presentation ended, the clients gave a standing ovation. Sheila and Beverly also congratulated Jackson, proud of his success. Thanks to this meeting, not only was the contract with the client extended, but also an additional agreement was concluded, which brought significant profits to the company. Jackson called Joseph and told him about the successful meeting. Joseph was happy and proud of his partner. After finishing the conversation, Jackson felt incredibly satisfied. He wanted to share this news with Tara. Jackson got into the car and drove to the office where she worked. The parking lot was almost empty, and he parked his SUV so he could see the entrance. A few minutes later, he saw Tara leave the building and get into the Jaguar. Jackson immediately turned on the video recorder installed in his car. His heart began to beat faster and his stomach tightened. He felt that something was wrong. Pursing his lips, he started the engine and carefully followed the car. At one of the traffic lights, he saw Tara lean over and kiss the man sitting behind the wheel. Anger and pain overwhelmed him. He almost ran out of the car to pull the man out and beat him, but he pulled himself together. Jackson quickly wrote down the car's license plate number. He called a friend from the police and asked him to dial the number. While he waited for an answer, he continued to follow them, watching them laugh and kiss again at traffic lights. Finally, a friend called back and said the car was registered to a man named Brian Forst. He also sent the owner's address. Jackson continued to follow the car until it stopped at the Marriott Hotel. He saw Tara and Brian get out of the car, hold hands, and enter the building. His chest seemed to be constricted, and one thought was pounding in his head: this is the end. When the couple disappeared behind the hotel doors, Jackson got out of the car and headed to the front desk. Approaching the young employee at the reception, he said, "This is my wife with this bastard. Give me a copy of their reservation, please." "Sorry, sir, but this is against our policy," she answered with a professional smile. Jackson pulled out a $100 bill from his wallet and placed it on the counter. The girl continued to smile, but did not move from her place. He added another bill. "Wait for me at the side door. I'll be there soon," she said quietly, looking around nervously. Jackson walked away and waited for her at the indicated place. She came out a few minutes later and handed him a copy of the armor. Then she added, "Here is their room number, and just in case, this is a coupon for a free weekend stay at our hotel and 6 tickets for a meal in a restaurant. You need somewhere to think about what to do next. Good luck to you." Clutching the papers in his hand, Jackson thanked her and headed towards the elevator. He pressed the button for the desired floor and began to rise. When the doors opened, he walked steadily towards the room. Jackson knocked. A couple of seconds later, he heard a man's voice. "Who's there?" Jackson covered the peephole with his hand and knocked again. When he heard the handle click, his heart began to beat faster. Brian answered the door wearing only his robe. Jackson instantly hit him. "Oh God, Jackson!" Tara screamed, standing to the side. She was fully dressed, but that didn't matter anymore. "Don't even dare come home, Tara," he said, pointing his finger at her. Jackson turned around and left the room. He heard Tara screaming his name and running after him, but he silently entered the elevator, turned around, showed her his middle finger, and pressed the button to the first floor. As Jackson walked down to the lobby, he felt his anger gradually subside. The world around me regained clarity, and the mind began to soberly assess what had happened. Approaching the reception desk, he said grimly, "Clean up the mess in room 567. He got into his blazer and drove home. Just a few blocks from the hotel, his cell phone rang. He answered, putting it on speakerphone. "Jackson, it's not what you think. Damn you, Tara. I know perfectly well what I saw." "Don't call me again," Jackson said and hung up. She called back immediately, but he did not answer. After the 5th ring in a row, he turned off the phone. He then went to the bank, canceled all the joint cards, and withdrew 70% of the funds from their accounts. I opened a new account and received cards in my name only. Back at the Blazer, he called Joseph and told him everything that happened. He expressed sympathy and offered his help. Jackson replied that it was not necessary. After the call, he stopped at Walmart, bought a stack of old boxes, and headed home. He grabbed some duct tape from the garage, gathered a few boxes, and began packing Tara's things. He simply emptied the contents of the boxes and folded the clothes until the box was full. Then I taped it up and loaded it into the Blazer. He worked the rest of the day and evening, packing almost all of her things. His car was packed to the brim. He folded the rear seats down to create more space. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the locksmith called him and said that he had finished changing the locks on the front, back, and side doors. Jackson thanked him for his efficiency and gave him a tip of $100. After the locksmith left, he changed the access code for the garage door and home alarm. Jackson called Bill and said he was taking Tara's things. Bill tried to say something, but Jackson hung up. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Joseph. Jackson replied. Joseph said that he had already made arrangements with the best divorce lawyer in the state, who would fly in tomorrow morning, and made an appointment for 8 in the morning at his office. Jackson thanked him and said he would come. He arrived at Bill's house 20 minutes later. When he arrived, he honked his horn and parked backwards in his driveway. Bill came out and waited for him at the curb. When Jackson got out of the car, Bill approached him. "What the hell is going on, Jackson? Tara has been crying all morning. I caught her with another man at the Marriott today," Jackson replied. The answer literally knocked the wind out of Bill. He just stood there and looked at Jackson. They didn't say anything. Bill then walked over to the car, leaned against the Blazer, and took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Jackson." "Why?" "You didn't sleep with him," Jackson answered, leaning next to Bill. Bill laughed quietly, and they stood there in silence for a few seconds until Patricia came out of the house, her face red, and headed straight for the car. Bill noticed this and intercepted his wife halfway down the sidewalk. Jackson saw Bill whispering something in her ear, and her whole posture changed. Patricia lowered her head and shoulders, turned around, and walked into the house. Bill turned to Jackson and said he would help unload the boxes. Bill and Jackson spent 45 minutes unloading the car and moving everything into Bill's guest room. While they were moving boxes, Jackson heard Tara crying in Bill and Patricia's bedroom. He simply ignored it. He had nothing to say to her. As they walked out to the car to say goodbye, they saw Aunt Margaret standing next to the Blazer. Margaret was a 65-year-old widow. Her husband, Alan, died of cancer after 30 years of marriage. She was about 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed about 150 pounds. She had wavy, shoulder-length white hair and blue eyes. She wore black-framed glasses. Margaret reminded Jackson of actress Blythe Danner. She raised Tara and Patricia after their parents died in a car accident when the girls were 13. Jackson respected Margaret. She began working as a nurse at age 20 and worked for 40 years in one hospital, working through many specialties. After her husband's death, she continued to work for another 5 years, although her husband left her a substantial fortune. Jackson approached Margaret. Bill stood next to him. "Margaret," Jackson greeted her. "Jackson," she answered. "You know what she did?" "Yes, I know. Do you want to know how long this has been going on?" "It doesn't matter. Once is too much." "I know it's all very fresh right now, Jackson, but can we talk right now?" "Tomorrow I already have an appointment with the best divorce lawyer in the state." "I would rather drink glass than be near her," Jackson replied with more rage than he intended to show. Both had difficulty holding back tears. Jackson saw how Margaret tried to keep them from spilling, just as he did. "Give me half an hour to talk to you tomorrow, Jackson." "Please." Jackson looked at Margaret. He felt Bill place a hand on his shoulder in support. There was an awkward pause. "Come for dinner tomorrow at 5 in the evening. I'll give you 30 minutes just because I respect you, Margaret. When time runs out, your comments on this issue will also end." "I agree," she answered. She walked up to Jackson and hugged him. He returned her hug. When they parted, Margaret said, "Don't do anything rash, Jackson. This won't solve anything." "You mean so I don't punch her lover?" "Well done," Bill replied, patting Jackson on the back. Margaret patted Jackson's chest lightly and walked into the house. Bill and Jackson hugged and Jackson drove home. He drank whiskey for dinner and then more whiskey while watching the Lakers humiliate themselves. He quickly fell asleep around 11 and woke up to the sound of his alarm clock at 5 in the morning. He washed his face with cold water, put on sports clothes, and went for a run. The cold morning air brought him to his senses. After his run, he did a light workout in his home gym and took a shower. While eating breakfast, he scrolled through the messages on his phone. He received words of encouragement from Joseph and Bill. There was a message of apology and understanding from Patricia, and of course, there were many messages from Tara. They ranged from "please call me" to "it's not what you think" to "nothing happened in the room." He read them all and then deleted them. When he arrived at work, he took the dash cam out of his car to download the footage onto his computer and laptop. He was doing just that when Joseph walked into his office with a woman who looked to be about 35 years old. She extended her hand and introduced herself. Christina Caldwell. After meeting, she immediately got down to business. "You hired me to fly here on a private jet, and my services are not cheap. Where do you want to have the meeting, here in the office or in another room?" "Here, in the meeting room. Would you like something to eat? I know you arrived early on Saturday morning, and I really appreciate your time." "No, thanks, Jackson. On the plane, I ate 2 blueberry muffins and drank 2 glasses of orange juice," she answered as they walked towards the conference room. The meeting began with a discussion on what grounds Jackson wanted to file for divorce. When he said he wanted to sue for infidelity, she asked if he had proof. Jackson showed her the dash cam footage and hotel room reservation documents. Looking through the papers, she noticed, "This is reserved for Mr. and Mrs. Forst. They pretended to be spouses." "You know, Miss Caldwell, I don't care." "She cheated, that means it's over," Jackson answered sharply. He told her everything, about the pregnancy loss, Tara's depression, her refusal to get help, her angry outbursts when she hit him. He told her everything, from the time they met until this morning. She expressed displeasure that he withdrew 70% of the money from their joint accounts, warning that this could create problems. She then explained that the judge would likely require them to undergo couples therapy, especially since their problems began after the loss of their child. Jackson replied that he would rather go to prison. Abouth tried for months to get Tara to see a counselor, but she refused. She warned that if he did not comply with the judge's order, he could get his wish to go to prison. They discussed this for another hour, after which the meeting ended. Miss Caldwell promised to have the paperwork ready as soon as she returned to her office. As she left, she warned Jackson, "Stay away from her lover and limit communication with Tara to a minimum. Any word you say can be used against you. Also, since you haven't given her all her belongings, she may get the police involved to gain access to the house." Jackson walked her to the car that was waiting outside the office to take her to the airport. She said that, despite all the pomp with the private jet and car, next time she would come to the meeting herself, be it at his home or office. Returning to the office, he saw Joseph waiting for him. "So how did it go? How bad is the news?" asked Joseph. "The judge may order us to go to couples therapy, even though she refused to go when I suggested." "I'd rather go to jail than go now," Jackson replied. "I won't lie, Jackson. I'm damn glad you insisted on a marriage contract," Joseph said, hugging him before leaving. Jackson tried to concentrate on his work, but couldn't. He left the office around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and went home. Along the way, he ordered a double order of fettuccine chicken and broccoli in cream sauce with garlic bread from Luigi's restaurant for 4:50 p.m. via Easy Eats. Arriving home, he decided to finish packing Tara's things. He put the remaining items in boxes and placed them by the front door by 4:30 p.m. He then took a quick shower and put on a t-shirt and lounge pants, just in time to hear the doorbell ring. Jackson paid for the order, gave the courier a generous tip, put the food on plates, and waited. At exactly 5 o'clock in the evening, the doorbell rang. Jackson opened to let Margaret in. They hugged, and he walked her into the dining room. They sat down at the table, said a prayer, and began dinner. "That's great, Jackson. Thank you. Please, Margaret. But let's get straight to the point. I'll tell you a story because I know you can keep it to yourself." "Okay," Jackson replied, continuing to eat. Margaret took a deep breath and said, "I cheated on Alana when we were married." She told Jackson her story. In 1995, she worked as an intensive care unit nurse and was sent to Kobe, Japan, to provide medical care to victims of a devastating earthquake. More than 6,000 dead, incredible destruction. It was the worst thing she saw with her own eyes. Physical, emotional, and moral exhaustion, long working hours, separation from family, all this led to her having a short-term affair with an English doctor. Jackson listened and watched as Margaret wiped away her tears as she explained how devastating it was for Alan when she confessed. She told of how he slept on a camp cot in their bedroom, refusing to share a bed with her. It took them a year of therapy with a marriage counselor and conversations with their pastor to begin to rebuild their relationship. She pulled out a piece of paper from her purse, its edges frayed and yellowed with age. Jackson unfolded it and read, "My dear Margaret, here at the end of the road, I could not have chosen a better companion for all the joys and difficulties than you. I wouldn't change a thing. I love you more than you will ever know, and I will wait for you at those very pearly gates." Jackson folded the note and returned it to Margaret. "I will not force you to make a choice in one direction or another," said Margaret. "I know the pain and destruction that it brought you. But my point is that there is hope in marriage after cheating. It's not easy. The pain will stay with both of you for years to come. Margaret, it was you who cheated on Alan, not he who cheated on you." "You can't understand this pain," Jackson replied. Margaret put the note back in her purse and took a deep breath. "As a favor to me, Jackson, try family therapy. If you do decide to get a divorce, which I cannot blame you for, the court will almost certainly order you to go through with it anyway. Try. This could help save your marriage. If it doesn't help, You can prove to the judge that you at least tried. Jackson leaned back in his chair and took a sip of his tea. Margaret made a compelling case. His lawyer said much the same thing this morning. Okay, Margaret, I'll go to family therapy, but Tara must pay for it. She made a mistake, let her correct it. Agreed. I will make an appointment for you and call you to let you know when your first session starts. Thank you, Jackson. I know this is a difficult decision, but I also know that you still love her. And although you can't see it now, she loves you too. Thank you for coming, Margaret. Good luck at bingo and tell Pastor Keith that I'm looking forward to a rematch, Jackson said as he saw her off. After Margaret left, Jackson decided he needed to go for a run to clear his head. He had just walked out the door when a police car parked outside. Jackson walked towards the officer sitting in the patrol car. How can I help you, officer? Are you Jackson William Brown? Yes, it's me. I have a warrant for your arrest. Fine. What am I accused of? On the attack. Can I make a quick call? I'll put it on speaker so you can hear the conversation. The officer agreed, and Jackson called Joseph. He informed him that he was being arrested and asked him to contact a lawyer. The officer then handcuffed Jackson, put him in the car, and drove him to the station. At the station, Jackson was photographed, fingerprinted, and searched. He was then given a bottle of lice shampoo and sent to the shower. After an hour in the cell, he was taken to an interrogation room where a corporate lawyer and a man in a suit were waiting for him. I'm the district attorney, the man introduced himself, sitting down opposite Jackson and his lawyer. Let's get down to business right away. Great, because my client has nothing to do here, Jackson's lawyer retorted. The prosecutor took out several bound pages from his briefcase and continued. You attacked Mr. Brian Forst at the Marriott Hotel after finding him in a room with your wife. Mr. Forst and your wife testified at the scene. Additionally, the video shows you telling the front desk manager, cleaning room 567. Is this a serious charge? Asked the lawyer, leafing through the papers. Yes, it is. Mr. Brown was not in control of his emotions at that moment. I'm ready to reduce the charges to hooliganism. Mr. Brown will have to pay a $150 fine and perform 24 hours of community service. If Mr. Brown agrees to plead guilty, I can arrange for him to see the judge on Monday, and he will be free by lunchtime. Why don't we bring this case to court? You yourself admitted that he did not control his emotions. Do you really think a jury will find him guilty after he walked in on his wife in a hotel room with another man? Jackson's lawyer asked. All three of us are smart businessmen. Yes, I know who you are, Mr. Brown, and I am truly sorry about your wife's infidelity. However, I absolutely cannot seem to be soft on criminals. Reducing the charge is not only fair to Mr. Brown, but it also saves taxpayers money on a trial and shows me as a reasonable person to the voters. At that moment, an officer came into the office and whispered something in the district attorney's ear, after which he stood up and left. That's a good deal, Jackson, especially considering the witness statements and the video footage. We can bargain on the number of public works, but I highly doubt that they will be canceled altogether, the lawyer said. Jackson agreed with the lawyer and decided to accept the plea deal, but the district attorney returned. Mr. Brown, you are free. We will not prosecute you on these charges. I hope this unfortunate incident does not cause you any ill will toward the Dawes office or Jefferson County law enforcement, he said and walked out. Jackson was given his belongings back. He signed and was sent home. On the way home, the lawyer asked Jackson if he knew what happened. Jackson said he didn't know, but was glad he wouldn't have to spend the night in jail. They laughed, shook hands, and Jackson expressed his gratitude. As Jackson approached the house, he saw Tara's car parked in the driveway. He drove into the garage and then went outside. When Tara began to speak, he raised his hand to stop her. Having turned on the recording of the conversation on his phone, he said that they could talk. Joseph called me and said you were arrested. I'm so sorry, Jackson. Yes, it was simply unforgettable, Tara. There's nothing like being searched and forced to wash yourself with lice shampoo. I just want you to know that I had nothing to do with your arrest. Of course you are involved, Tara. The district attorney said I was arrested based on your and your lover's statements at the scene. He's not my lover, Jackson. Please, let's just go inside and talk. My lawyer advised me to keep contact with you to a minimum, so I have to ask you to leave. Thanks for stopping by to see how I am, Tara. Good night, Jackson said, turned off the phone and went into the house. On Monday at work, everything went as usual. Jackson continued to work on a new security program. He looked into the offices and offices of his employees, chatting with them about how their weekend went and how their families were doing. He and Joseph worked hard and cared about their employees, and it showed. Everyone who worked at the company has stayed since its opening. Some of them even turned down better offers to stay. Jackson was very proud of this loyalty. On Tuesday morning, Joseph came into the office to sign a contract renewal with a client who had secured a bonus for the company. Several members of the media were present to take photographs and conduct interviews. Jackson and Joseph then held a lengthy meeting with the payroll company and bank, discussing how to distribute the bonus. By the time his shift rolled around at 3 p.m., Jackson was standing at the door, handing each employee a check for $750. Everyone was pleasantly surprised. Jackson and Joseph decided to allocate part of the bonus to celebrate the company's anniversary and Christmas party. As Jackson entered through the side door of the garage, his phone rang. It was Margaret. She said Tara had made an appointment for them to see family psychologist, Dr. Carol Myers, on Thursday at 5 p.m. They spoke briefly about the events of the day. Margaret praised Jackson's decision on employee bonuses. A few minutes later, they said goodbye without mentioning Tara, except for the admission announcement. Jackson decided not to go to work on Wednesday. Instead, he spent the day researching family psychologist Dr. Myers. She was a 55-year-old divorced woman with 3 adult children. She had a doctorate in psychology from the University of Michigan. She ordered takeout every Monday and Friday, went to church on Sundays, and played bingo on Wednesdays. Her colleagues praised her professionalism, and her treatment success rate was 50%. This reassured Jackson. It meant she wasn't trying to pressure clients into favoring one particular solution. On Thursday morning, Jackson arrived at work to find a new mini fridge in his office, sitting on a new desk. It had an orange ribbon attached to it and a card with the signatures of all the employees. Inside the refrigerator were 20 bottles of Iby cream soda. Jackson laughed. He was touched. He personally thanked each employee. After that, he continued working on the new security program until lunch. After lunch, he returned home to rest, collect his thoughts, and prepare for his first session with the psychologist. When the time came, Jackson put on his Archie Griffin t-shirt and went to the reception. He arrived at Dr. Myers' office at 4:45 p.m. Sitting down in the waiting room, he began to read a magazine, Sports Illustrated, lying on the table. Exactly at 17 o'clock, the secretary escorted him to his office. When he entered, he saw that Tara was already sitting on the sofa. To the uninitiated, her clothes might seem ordinary. However, Jackson knew that this was not the case. She wore a pink off-the-shoulder summer blouse, light blue jeans, and white sandals. She had pink nail polish on her nails, and her hair was pulled back into a messy bun. The eye makeup brought out her blue eyes. She dressed exactly the way he always liked. "It's not a fair game, Tara," Jackson said, sitting down on the other end of the couch. Tara just smiled and put her hands on her knees. "Are you wearing an Ohio jersey to tell me something?" asked Dr. Myers. "Well, of course. I'm in enemy territory, so I have to represent my team and remind you that Michigan sucks," Jackson responded with a smile. Dr. Myers laughed. "Yeah, we're so sucky that we beat you in football and basketball again this year." Jackson laughed, and Dr. Myers got to the point. She introduced herself and explained that she did not intend to persuade them to reconcile or divorce. Her task is to help them learn to communicate, understand each other, and cope with the pain that they both experience. Jackson and Tara nodded, indicating that they understood her. "So, why are you here today?" After a few moments of silence, Tara spoke first. I did something very stupid and offensive. But that's not what Jackson thinks. I want this couple's therapy to help us put this behind us and stay married for the rest of our lives. I see, Dr. Myers replied. Are you living together now? No. Jackson kicked me out, and I'm staying with my sister. I kicked you out after I caught you with another man, Jackson added. Jackson, you can speak after Tara is finished, Dr. Myers said softly. So, Tara, have you been with another man other than your husband? Yes, I was with another man and Jackson caught us, but that's not what he thinks. It's clear. Now, Jackson, why are you here today? Asked Dr. Myers. I'm here because the court will most likely order couples therapy when we start divorce proceedings, so I just do it in advance to save time and effort later. Tara sobbed quietly and began to cry. Dr. Myers handed her a box of tissues. Jackson, have you filed for divorce yet? I have met with my lawyer, Miss Christina Caldwell, and she is currently preparing the paperwork. Fine. Jackson, I will ask you not to file documents with the court for now. No, I will serve them at the moment I choose. This is my decision. Not yours, not hers, not anyone else's. Jackson, family therapy is a difficult process. In my experience, if divorce papers are already in the process of being filed, working to repair the relationship becomes even more difficult. However, this is entirely your decision. My decision has already been made, Jackson replied sharply. Dr. Myers continued to take notes in her notebook. Fine. Now, Jackson, why do you think Tara cheated on you? Jackson detailed to Dr. Myers how, after losing her child, Tara became cold, distant, and even violent. How she refused any therapy despite his pleas and the requests of her family. How he decided to take her to lunch to celebrate his achievement, only to see her getting into a Jaguar. How he followed her to a hotel and found her kissing another man. He said that he filmed everything on video, made copies, and gave it to his lawyer. Telling all this, Jackson again felt anger and pain overwhelm him. His body was burning, his fists were clenched tightly. Thank you, Jackson. I understand that remembering this was not easy and painful, Dr. Myers said. Tara, is what Jackson said true? Yes and no. I never slept with Brian. I never had sex with anyone else after we got married. Fine. Here's what we'll do, Dr. Myers said as she walked over to her desk and looked at the computer. I will meet you both on Thursdays at 6 in the evening. Jackson, I will meet with you in person on Mondays at 6 in the evening. Tara, I will meet with you in person on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Are these times right for you? Jackson and Tara agreed. Dr. Myers scheduled future appointments and then sat back down in the chair across from them. Now, is there anything you want to say to each other before we part ways until next week? Jackson, I'm so sorry this happened. Please, is there any way we can go somewhere and talk without witnesses, just you and me? Tara, I'm so damn angry and hurt that I want nothing to do with you. The only place I'm willing to talk to you is here at Dr. Myers's. If I have something to tell you, I'll say it here. I don't want to talk to you or even see you anywhere else. He got up, left the office, and left. He had nothing more to say to Tara or Dr. Myers. Jackson got into his SUV and drove to work. He enjoyed interacting with the second and third shift workers. They were younger, full of new ideas, and saw things from a different perspective. They knew how to find ways to have fun while working. Jackson also loved the first shift workers. They tended to be older and have children, so they worked more purposefully and followed a schedule. To be fair, the first shift worked the hardest. However, all three shifts worked conscientiously, just each in their own way. After 6 consultations together, Dr. Myers began to doubt whether Jackson and Tara could reconcile and remain married. At each session, Tara insisted that the situation was not what it seemed, but she refused to explain what exactly happened. Jackson remained hurt and angry because she refused to tell the truth. Dr. Myers concluded that Jackson could have overcome his pain and anger if he had known the whole truth. However, she also believed that Jackson may not want to know the truth because he liked to remain angry. This allowed him to feel emotions that he could not feel when trying to help Tara after she lost her child. Meanwhile, Tara was on edge. Her pain from losing her pregnancy, the guilt over what she had done, and the destruction of her marriage had pushed her to her breaking point. Dr. Myers prescribed her antidepressants to help cope with these difficulties. One evening after an individual session with Tara, Dr. Myers decided to push her to tell the truth. It was a risky step, but the doctor understood that without this, there would be no progress. Tara, before you leave today, we need to discuss something important. I'm absolutely sure that if you don't tell Jackson the whole truth and explain everything to the best of your ability, your marriage will end. Tara looked at Dr. Myers and began fiddling with her hands. I don't think Jackson will continue to come here. And to be honest, he didn't need to come here in the first place. But I'll tell you this, if you tell him everything, the marriage will probably end anyway. But this is the only way to begin to restore what has been destroyed. Think about it, Tara. I'm expecting you both on Thursday. Dr. Myers finished. On Thursday evening, Jackson and Tara sat in the waiting room waiting for their appointment with Dr. Myers. Tara tried to start a conversation with him, but he did not react. He could see that she had something important on her mind, but he didn't care. He just sat in silence, leafing through a magazine. Finally, they were called into the office. They sat on the sofa, as usual, at opposite ends. Tara was the first to break the silence. There's something I have to tell Jackson, and I have to do it now, while I still have the courage to do it, she said, taking some tissues from her purse. Okay, go ahead, Tara, Dr. Myers said. Jackson, I know you want to know what exactly happened between me and Brian. Yes, I want to know that. I need this to move on, Jackson replied, feeling his stomach tighten into a huge knot. Tara wiped her eyes and took several deep breaths. Fine. Please don't interrupt me or ask questions while I'm speaking. After I'm done, you can ask anything. But please let me say everything to the end. I don't promise you anything, Tara. You lost all privileges of politeness when you cheated on me. A lot of what I say may not make sense now, but these were my feelings at the time. I want you to know that I cannot express in words how much I regret what happened. I swear to God, I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for this if you give me a chance. I love you more than anything in the world. More than you can imagine, Tara said, taking a deep breath and wiping her eyes again. Jackson just kept looking at Tara. When I had a miscarriage, I was crushed. I felt like a complete failure. I felt like an inferior woman. I felt like I couldn't be who you wanted me to be because I was afraid that I would no longer be able to give you the children you wanted so much. After returning home, these feelings only intensified. I know it's normal to feel depressed after something like this, but it was out of control for me. I didn't want to get out of bed. I had to force myself to do at least something. In those rare moments when we made love, I was terrified that if I got pregnant again, everything would happen again. Dr. Myers noticed that Jackson's fists were clenching so tightly that the skin was beginning to crack. She stood up and handed him the napkins. Tara kept her eyes on Jackson, and he kept her eyes on her. These thoughts only made my depression worse. I knew I was pushing you away, but I couldn't find a way out. The longer this went on, the worse I felt, as if I was drowning in quicksand. When you and my family started begging me to see a psychologist, I felt like you thought I was crazy. This only reinforced my feelings of worthlessness, as if I were some ugly woman unable to give you children. And the more I felt this, the more I moved away from you, even when I saw that you were trying to help me. Tara took a sip of water from the bottle on the table next to the sofa. Jackson stood up, threw the napkins in the trash, and sat back down. Tara and Dr. Myers noticed that he had tears running down his cheeks, but his gaze remained directed at Tara. She wiped her eyes and continued speaking, despite Dr. Myers' surprise. Now let's move on to Brian. Brian was actually a client of mine for work. We worked on a project that ended a few months before I lost it. About a week after I returned to work, I had a breakdown and started crying uncontrollably. I hid in the closet when Brian heard me and came inside. He asked what happened. I cried so hard that I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe, so he stayed with me until I calmed down. Then he took me to lunch at a restaurant where he had a private booth where he ate every day. I don't know why. Maybe I was just desperate to talk, but I told him everything. Tara wiped her eyes and blew her nose. She threw the used napkins into the trash, took new ones, and continued. Brian kept repeating that he understood me, and when I finally finished, he said that he was always ready to listen to me if necessary. After that day, we started having lunch together once a week and just talking. We were just talking. Dr. Myers noticed that Jackson kept his eyes on Tara. Even when she looked away or wiped away tears, he did not take his eyes off her, listening carefully to every word. Dr. Myers felt a small glimmer of hope for a moment as Tara continued to speak. When you went on a business trip, I really needed someone nearby. And when my sister called and insisted that I go with them, I finally broke down and agreed. I went to their house, and we all went to the party together in Bob's car. We hadn't been at the country club very long when Brian showed up. I didn't plan this. I didn't know he would go there. I didn't even know he was a member of the club. He asked me to dance, and I agreed. After a few dances, he walked me back to the table Bill had reserved, and I invited him to join us. My sister didn't like it at all. I continued to drink and had a good time. By 11 o'clock, I was a mess and kept dancing with Brian. I don't remember much of the rest of the evening. I remember spending a lot of time with Brian and Patricia coming out and telling me it was time for everyone to go home. I remember Brian kissing me at one point. I don't even remember how I ended up at my sister's house later. When I woke up the next morning, she went on a tirade. She said I'm an idiot for cheating on you and acting like a complete slut at such a big party among people we all know. She was ashamed of me, of Bill, of herself, but most of all of you. Tara burst into tears again and wiped her eyes. She took another sip of water to calm herself down. She said I should get my act together and start acting like a loving wife. On the way home, I realized that she was right. I really tried to seem like a happy and loving wife. I know it didn't last long, but no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't hold on any longer. A week after the party at the club, Brian called me and invited me to dinner. It turned out to be a picnic. He grabbed pasta and a bottle of wine from his favorite restaurant. Everything was so calm. He said everything I wanted to hear, and before I realized what was happening, we were kissing. I satisfied him, but there was no sex as such. After these words from Tara, Jackson stood up and forcefully slammed the office door behind him. Tara burst into tears again, and Dr. Myers ran after him. At the reception, the secretary blocked the exit from the building. Dr. Myers approached Jackson. You said to yourself that you want to know the truth in order to move forward, Jackson. You knew it wouldn't be easy, but I didn't expect you to run away from it like a coward. Jackson turned around and looked at her with such rage and pain that Dr. Myers became scared for a moment, and she took a step back. Listen carefully here, Carol. Dr. Myers suddenly felt like a child. It was the first time he called her by name. This hasn't happened to her in years. She felt pure anger emanating from Jackson. You have no idea how I feel, so go back to your office and leave me alone. Dr. Myers pulled herself together and answered him softly. Come back and give yourself a chance to close this chapter and move on. You saw for yourself what success Tara has achieved. It's all for both of you, and I think you're smart enough to understand that. Jackson looked at her. It was as if she were pierced by his eyes. He was breathing heavily. I'll be back in a minute, he said. Dr. Myers nodded and returned to the office. Tara sat on the sofa, curled up into a ball and covering her face with her hands. Dr. Myers sat down next to her and patted her on the shoulder. You're doing great, Tara. When Jackson gets back, I want you to continue. It's good for both of you, I can see that. Will he really come back? Asked Tara. Yes, I will be back. I have to admit, it does make me feel better when I say it all out loud, Tara said, sniffling and wiping away her tears. Jackson is back. Dr. Myers stood up and sat down in her seat. Jackson sat back down on the couch. "Okay, Tara, please continue," Dr. Myers said. Tara took a few deep breaths to calm herself and continued. "After that incident, the guilt became simply unbearable, and my depression only intensified. It seemed like I just couldn't get rid of Brian. Every time I saw him after that dinner, the feeling of guilt became stronger and stronger. The more I blamed myself, the worse my depression became. It got so bad that I could barely cope with work and housework. By the time you found us together in a restaurant, I had already satisfied him several times. But Jackson, I never allowed him more. That day at the Marriott was the first time we went to a hotel. I'm sure I would just satisfy him again, and I know he wanted to have sex. But I can honestly say that we did not and would not have sex because I was afraid of getting pregnant again. I know it sounds strange, but I didn't want to betray you like that. Sex was just for you." "Jackson, your hands and lips are bleeding again," Dr. Myers said. Jackson didn't even flinch from the pain. Tara poured out her soul to him, trying to save their marriage, and he silently kept everything inside. This made her feel even worse. Luckily, individual sessions helped her learn to cope with her emotions in healthier ways. She noticed Dr. Myers' secretary came in with a first aid kit. Tara continued her confession while Jackson's hands were bandaged. "I ran out to look for you, but didn't see your SUV. You didn't answer my calls. I had to call a taxi to go back to work and pick up the car. Then I just drove around aimlessly until I finally went to see my sister. She gets so angry and despises me that now she can barely talk to me without losing her temper. Since then, my life has completely collapsed," Tara said, sobbing harder. "Jackson, I love you more than life itself. This will never, ever happen again. I'll spend my whole life trying to redeem myself if you let me. Thanks to Dr. Myers, I learned to cope with my feelings. I can work productively with my pain, pregnancy loss, parental death, and other things." Tears streamed down her face, streaking her makeup. Jackson's face remained stony, his jaw and fists clenched. Dr. Myers spoke up. "Jackson, before you say anything, I want to add a few words. When a woman is depressed, the risk of cheating increases. When a woman suffers from severe clinical depression, as Tara did, and has low self-esteem, all it takes is someone to listen and manipulate her. Tara was very sick, Jackson, and she had been that way for a long time." Jackson was silent for a while. Tara felt the cold coming from him. "So when you were depressed, instead of confiding in me, your husband, you went to a stranger and told him what you should have told me. You also satisfied him, which you almost never do to me. You continued to do this despite feeling guilty. Is this what you're telling me now, Tara?" "Yes, and I can't tell you how much I regret everything, Jackson." "That sounds like a long excuse for your behavior. Tens of thousands of women, millions of women around the world suffer from depression, and you know what they don't do. They do not act like cheaters and harlots. You just admitted that you made these choices consciously. You not only gave him your body, but also your heart. Everything that should have belonged to me, your husband." Jackson stood up. "I'm going to move on, and I definitely can't do that here," he said and walked out the door. Tara burst into tears and covered her face with her hands. "Tara, I know this is not the answer you wanted, but I think there is one important positive thing here," Dr. Myers said. Tara raised her head. "Oh yeah, and what moment is this?" "He didn't say he would file for divorce. There's nothing more we can do except see how it goes next week." Tara tried calling Jackson all day Sunday, but he didn't pick up. Margaret also tried calling him all weekend, but to no avail. On Sunday afternoon, Patricia and Bill drove to their house. At first, everything looked normal. The furniture was in place. Food was in the refrigerator, freezer, and cupboards. But when they went up to the bedroom, it turned out that Jackson's clothes had disappeared from the closet. There were no toiletries in the bathroom. The garage was empty. His tools were also gone. Patricia and Bill looked at each other sadly. They understood that Tara would be depressed when she found out about this, and they themselves were hurt. They were afraid that they had lost a good friend. Tara was at work on Monday morning when her secretary walked into her office. "Did you hear what happened to Brian?" Tara felt her stomach immediately twist and a hot wave spread throughout her body. She leaned back in her chair. "No, what happened?" "He was found beaten in his home." "Oh my God," Tara said. "Will he survive?" "Yes." "How do you know all this?" asked Tara. "I had a short affair with him. The police came to our home and questioned my husband. It was terrible to relive that mistake. Now I sleep on the fold-out sofa again. I can't believe what a fool I was for getting involved with that snake." "Oh yeah, that's the funny thing, Tara. They found his precious Jaguar in the garage. The car had been compressed into a cube," she said, laughing. "Who do you think did this?" Tara asked, trying to sound calm. "Well, where was your husband this weekend?" Tara gasped and covered her face with her hands. "Oh God, who else knows?" "Everyone knows, Tara. People here are not blind, deaf, or stupid." "Oh God, I hate myself even more," Tara said, breaking into tears. "By the way, the police called. They want you to come to the station and answer a few questions right now," the secretary said and left the office. Tara wiped her eyes, blew her nose, stood up and cleaned herself up. She took her bag and jacket off the hanger, opened the office door, and walked out. Her boss, HR manager, corporate lawyer, and several employees were waiting for her at the secretary's desk. Some of them were familiar to her, some were not. Tara noticed the secretary packing his things into a box and her stomach dropped. But suddenly all the employees parted, as if by the will of Moses. A young woman in a formal suit with a manila envelope in her hands was heading toward Tara, followed by Dr. Myers. "No!" Tara screamed, falling to her knees and bursting into tears. Dr. Myers ran over to Tara and knelt down next to her. Tara cried on her shoulder while Dr. Myers stroked her hair. The young woman also squatted down. "Are you Mrs. Tara Brown?" she asked. "I was depressed after losing my pregnancy. It was a mistake," Tara said brokenly between sobs. "Your documents have been handed to you," the woman said, handing the envelope to Tara and taking a photo of it on her phone. Tara took the manila envelope and tried to tear it, but the woman stopped her. "Mrs. Brown, I am also the lawyer your husband hired to represent you. I understand that you are suffering and want to save your marriage. I know the circumstances of your affair. It was a mistake. Please, Lord, let this not be true," Tara exclaimed, choking on sobs. Dr. Myers lifted her head and looked around. Some women watching this also cried. An oppressive silence hung in the air. Dr. Myers felt that these people expected to see a scandal, but instead witnessed the destruction of the soul and heart of another person. She looked at the older man in a formal suit. "Get these people out of here." This man was the main boss. He firmly and quickly got everyone back to work. Together with him, Dr. Myers, the lawyer, the corporate lawyer, and the human resources manager, they helped Tara up and sat her down on the couch in the office. Dr. Myers and the lawyer sat next to her, holding her hands until her breathing and crying gradually subsided. "Mrs. Brown, I know you don't want to hear this, but I strongly advise you to sign these papers. He gives you everything. A house with everything in it. Half of the funds from the general account. All he wants is his SUV and for you to leave his business alone. If I contest the divorce, can the judge order him to go back to counseling and stay?" asked Tara. "Mrs. Brown, you were in a long-term sexual relationship with another man. Your husband has already completed a course of joint consultations with Dr. Myers. If you contest the divorce and it goes to trial, you will not only lose, but you will receive far less than what Mr. Brown is offering you in these documents." The company lawyer intervened. "Can I see these documents, Tara?" Tara nodded, and the woman picked up the papers and began to study them carefully. Then Tara's boss spoke. "Tara, we are not here to fire you. You are a wonderful employee, and we have always been pleased with your work. We understand that you have experienced severe depression following the loss of your child, and it may not have been easy. However, you have violated our corporate code of conduct, and for this you will have to be punished. We will not allow your participation in new projects for a year. This means that you will not receive bonuses and other benefits associated with them. But we all decided that if you need more time to deal with depression and personal problems, you can take time off, and it will not count as the use of your personal or vacation days. The corporate lawyer, having studied the documents, said, "Mrs. Brown, I agree with your lawyer. I also strongly recommend that you sign these papers. The house alone costs $500,000, and the cost of the plot is another $500,000. Your husband has evidence of your infidelity, and the judge will likely rule in his favor if you contest the divorce. Personally, I am very sorry that you have to go through this. I know how hard it is to get divorced. I will now draw up the documents for your leave if you need it and give them to your lawyer." The corporate lawyer left. Tara looked at Dr. Myers. "What do you think I should do?" Dr. Myers took a deep breath. "I think you should sign these papers, Tara. Jackson did everything he could to help you. He attended every joint consultation. He continues to take care of you, Tara. He found you a good lawyer, and he is giving you everything. It's time to let him move on, and you need to keep working on yourself. You have come a long way, and although Jackson is hurt, I know he is glad that you are getting the help you need and are on the road to recovery." The boss led everyone out of the office except Tara, Dr. Myers, and her lawyer. Tara took a deep breath, walked over to her desk, and picked up a pen. "The police want to question me about Brian, so I'll probably just sign this now." With tears streaming down her face, Tara signed the divorce papers and put down her pen. "I hope that wherever he is, God will let him know that I am sorry and that I love him more than my own life. I will never forgive myself for what I did," Tara said as she stood up and walked out of the office with her lawyer and Dr. Myers. Meanwhile, in Jackson's office, Jackson looked at his computer monitor where there was a video of Tara signing the divorce papers. "I hope that wherever he is, God will let him know that I am sorry and that I love him more than my own life. I will never forgive myself for what I did," he heard her say. His partner Joseph sat next to him and also looked at the monitor. "Do you think they even remember that we manage their security systems?" he asked Jackson. "Hardly. They're too busy with the lawsuit my lawyer filed against them this morning," Jackson responded. "Do you think you'll get anywhere with this lawsuit, Jackson?" Yes, everyone knew that he was a womanizer. Everyone knew she was cheating. "I think they would rather settle the case than let this all become public knowledge." "How much did you apply for?" asked Joseph. $1 million after taxes, plus attorney's fees." "Just something? This is a small thing, considering how much you are worth as a co-owner of the company and how many shares you have." Joseph was surprised. "Money is not for me. I'm going to give them to our employees as Christmas bonuses this year." Joseph laughed and patted Jackson on the shoulder. "You are truly an amazing person and boss. I'm proud to call you my best friend." "Thanks," Jackson replied, leaning back in his chair. He turned and looked at Joseph. "I heard that Brian went to the hospital. I wonder how this happened." "I don't know," Joseph said with a grin. "But guys like him usually have plenty of enemies." Joseph stood up and walked towards Jackson's office door. Stopping in the doorway, he turned towards it and leaned his elbows on the frame. "By the way, Blackwater Defense Security is getting free service for the next 10 years. I made an agreement with them a couple of weeks ago." Jackson looked at him in surprise. "Have you entered into an agreement with Blackwater Defense Security? You always said that you don't want to work with such companies because, to put it mildly, they don't always follow the law." "Do you remember Midshipman Smith? So now he works for them. I flew to the meeting to have lunch with him and catch up. He asked why you didn't come, and I explained your situation to him. He expressed sympathy and mentioned that his new employer was looking for a reliable network security company. One thing after another, and we came to an agreement." "I thought you never wanted to get involved with people like them," Jackson said, standing up and walking over to Joseph. Joseph straightened up and looked at Jackson with a firm expression. The bonds of brotherhood are not broken when you leave the service. Day or night, rich or poor, tomorrow or in 20 years. If someone touches one of us, he touches all of us. Jackson nodded, his face softening. Tell Midshipman Smith thank you from me, and tell me I'm glad that bastard will never be the same again. Joseph chuckled and replied, as if banana hands were skilled enough to place in Roman 4 and know where to cut. They both smiled, hugged, and Joseph left Jackson's office. Thank you, brother, Jackson said. They separated. Joseph looked at Jackson. Are you really going to give everyone $20,000 as a Christmas bonus? Certainly. We work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They work like hell, and without them, we wouldn't be where we are. I'm glad someone understands this. Lord knows I definitely don't get out of bed before noon most days, Joseph said with a grin. Sunrise is a beautiful sight. You should watch it sometime, Jackson replied, also grinning. They laughed again, and Joseph left Jackson's office, heading to his own room. Jackson, meanwhile, walked around the employees, asking them about the weekend. He truly cared about their well-being. 45 minutes later, he returned to the office to find Patricia waiting for him there. Seriously, Jackson, a whole mini fridge full of cream soda, she said with a smile. What are you doing here, Patricia? He asked, coming up and sitting down at the table. Can I ask you a couple of questions? Ask, but that doesn't mean I'll answer them. Patricia looked at him with a slight smile. When you kicked Tara out, you changed all the locks in the house, but left the spare key in the same place as before. Was this done on purpose? Yes, I thought Margaret would find him. Jackson noticed Patricia take a deep breath. Will you remain friends with Bill and me? I will certainly try, Patricia, but I won't lie. Our relationship will never be the same as before. You can't get a divorce and have everything remain as it was. I understand, Jackson, she replied with a sadness in her voice that he could detect. I always liked you and Bill. I don't blame you for what Tara did, he quickly added, hoping to calm her down a little. I know my sister made the worst mistake in marriage, but... She began, but Jackson interrupted her. She cheated on me, Patricia. She had a long-term sexual affair with another person. I know that they didn't sleep, but I think that what she did was also sex. I understand and agree with you, Jackson. Lord knows, if Bill had done something like that, I would have killed him. Jackson laughed. He rarely heard Patricia swear. Her words brought a smile to his face, and his laughter made her smile. I have to ask, Jackson, for your peace of mind. I know, Patricia. Ask, and I will answer honestly. Is there any chance that you can forgive her and forget all this? I tried to persuade her to go to the therapist alone. I tried to persuade her to come with me. I supported her when she suffered the loss of her child. But there is one thing that she and everyone else never understood. Do you know which one? Which? That she wasn't the only one who lost a child. I suffered too. We were both looking forward to it so much, and it ended in tragedy. I wanted us to grieve together as a family. Instead, she distanced herself from me. I couldn't even mourn the loss of our child. You're right, Jackson. It never even occurred to me. I'm sorry. I put all the pain aside to support my wife and our marriage. This is what a spouse does when necessary. She thanked me by giving her heart to someone else, and then lying to me for months after I found out and confronted her with the truth. She didn't trust me and showed me that she couldn't be trusted. But you know, Patricia, I forgave her the moment I yelled at her and walked out the door after our last session with the therapist. I sincerely wish her all the best. I hope she can handle it. I hope she feels better about whoever she ends up with in the future. Life is too short to carry around the pain and anger that I felt. Patricia cried silently as she listened to his words. She was a mixture of emotions, shame that she hadn't even thought about what Jackson had gone through, anger at her sister for her actions, and joy that Jackson had agreed to remain friends with them. She felt a little guilty for this joy. She stood up, walked over to Jackson, and hugged him. Don't disappear, Jackson. See you later, she said and left without giving him a chance to respond. Jackson sat down in his chair and went back to work. He worked, oblivious to the time, until the alarm on his phone rang at 2:45 p.m. After closing the current tasks, he sent an email to his employees, informing them that he was going on vacation and would be away for some time. Taking his jacket, he locked the office door and headed to his SUV. Tara was sitting in her car near his car. When Jackson got within 20 feet, she came out and waited for him. "Hey, Jackson." "Tara," he replied, stopping a few steps away from her. "I signed the papers." "Fine. Thank you, Tara. The police asked me questions today. Do you know why?" she asked. "Because your vile friend got what he deserved." "He's not my friend, Jackson. I haven't seen him since that day, and I don't want to see him again," she answered with a sigh. "Well, it depends on you, but I think he got what he deserved," he said, laughing. "They thought you might have been involved. He told them he suspected you. But I'm not involved in this. My lawyer has already provided them with all the information to confirm my alibi and location. If they have questions, they can wait until I get back from vacation." "Are you going on vacation?" Tara asked in surprise. "Yes. The plane is already preparing to take off. I'm going to the hotel to pack my things and head out now." "Where are you going?" Tara asked, not believing her ears. "Don't know. I'll just get on the plane and tell Stanley to go anywhere as long as it's at least a time zone away from here," Jackson replied, opening the door and getting into the car. "I continue to go to Dr. Myers. She really helps me become a better person. Now I understand that I treated you badly. You deserve someone better than I was at the end." "Yes, I do, Tara. Please call me when you get back. I'm wondering where you're going after all. You deserve this a long time ago," she said. Tara got into the car, started it, and drove away. Jackson stood and looked after her. He then got into his SUV and drove back to the hotel. Along the way, he reflected on the ongoing feelings that usually arise during a divorce. He was sad. He was angry. He was happy. He was wondering if he should call Tara after returning when his phone rang. Seeing that his lawyer was calling, he turned on the speakerphone. "She signed the papers, Jackson. I took them to court." "How long will it take?" he asked. 90 days. "So long? Who needs to be appeased to speed this up?" Jackson joked. The lawyer laughed. "This is standard procedure, Jackson. There's nothing you can do about it." "Thank you for letting me know. And for everything else too," Jackson said. "Always happy to help. I've never seen a woman not fight for a divorce from her $50 million husband. I'll call you if anything comes up," the lawyer said and hung up. Jackson parked the SUV, greeted the employee in the parking lot, and got into the elevator. As he stood up, he thought about everything that had happened that day. Patricia came to him. Tara came to him. He doubted they had coordinated their visits. Patricia was very angry with Tara, and they barely communicated. He hoped that this would change in the future and they would become close again. The elevator stopped, the door opened, and Jackson walked out, turning the corner. He saw the maid's cart next to the open door of his room. As he got closer, he heard laughter. Jackson walked to the door and saw two young maids having fun. One of them was wearing his flannel shirt with no pants and posing on the bed, while the other took photos of her with her phone. Jackson quietly entered the room and watched. They didn't notice him. "The man who lives here is cute," said the girl taking the photo. "I know, I would like him to caress me," replied the girl in Jackson's shirt. "If he lives here, it means he has money," added the girl with the phone. The girl on the bed turned over on her stomach and lifted her shirt, revealing a black thong. Jackson couldn't help but notice her slender figure. "Money isn't everything, you're just a greedy cow," the girl on the bed said, looking back at the camera with a smile. "Money is everything," answered another with a grin. "I'll choose love over money any day," the girl on the bed said, rolling onto her back and stretching out with her hands behind her head. At this point, Jackson decided to make his presence felt. "Hello, ladies. How are you doing today?" he said. Both girls screamed in surprise and jumped. The one taking the photo dropped her phone and quickly moved to the other side of the bed. The girl on the bed rose to her knees as Jackson and she stared at each other. Another girl, hiding behind the bed, began to repeat, "Sorry, sir. Sorry, sir." Jackson ignored her, focusing on the one on the bed. They studied each other with their eyes. Finally, after 20 to 30 seconds, the girl spoke. "Shut up, Juanita. He understands us." "Do you want to speak Spanish or English?" Jackson asked, heading to the closet to get his suitcase. The girl on the bed extended her hand. "I'm Sophia," she said. She didn't seem to mind at all that she was only wearing a shirt. She acted as if this was normal street conversation. Jackson shook her hand firmly. "I'm Jackson. Why are you wearing my shirt and going through my things while I'm gone?" Juanita took the moment to escape, running out the door and taking the cart with her down the hallway. Jackson and Sophia stared at each other again. Sophia decided that honesty was the best way out. "I really like you, Jackson. When we came to clean up the room, I saw your shirt hanging on the closet handle. It smelled nice, so I decided to wear it," she blurted out in one breath. Jackson looked at Sophia. Her blushing face betrayed the truth of her words. She looked striking, light brown skin, large brown eyes, and long black hair tied in a ponytail. She reminded him of Mila Kunis. "Thank you for the compliment, Sophia. I'm pleased, but I'm leaving, so I need a shirt." Sophia unbuttoned her shirt right in front of him. Jackson saw that she was wearing black lace lingerie underneath, perfectly emphasizing her curves. This was the first time in months that he felt something like this. However, he pulled himself together and started packing, not wanting to go too far. Sophia walked over to the chair and began to put on her uniform. When she looked up, she noticed Jackson looking at her out of the corner of his eye. She smiled. "Do you like what you see?" "Yes, but my divorce is not finalized yet," Jackson replied. Sophia smiled. "I'm sorry your marriage is over," she said, picking up the phone from the floor. "Thank you. It's in the past. There's nothing left to do but move on to something bigger and better," Jackson replied, sitting down at the table. "Where did you get your degree?" he asked. "At New York University." "Who did you study to be?" "Business management." "Why are you asking?" "How old are you and where are you from, Sophia?" "I'm 24 and from New York." "What's your last name, Sophia?" "How's yours?" she retorted, crossing her arms over her chest. "Brown. My name is Jackson Brown." "You may be cute, Jackson, but right now you look suspicious," says the one who stripped down to her underwear and took pictures in my shirt in my room. "Who's suspicious now?" Sophia laughed. "You're right, Jackson Brown. My name is Sophia Hernandez." Jackson put the phone on the table. "Did you write everything down, Freddie?" he asked. "Yes, boss. Give me a minute," came the voice on the speakerphone. Sophia narrowed her eyes. Her voice became sharp. "You tell me what's going on right now, or I'm calling the police." She was scared, a little angry, but also curious. Her gaze became intense, and tension hung in the room. Jackson remained sitting in the chair without losing his calm. A few seconds later, the silence was broken by the ringing of the phone. "Sophia Hernandez. I graduated from New York University with a degree in business management and a 3.5 GPA. Member of the Delta Phi Epsilon fraternity, although no longer in contact with fellow students due to internal conflict during her senior year. She is currently single, having recently broken up with a man she met in her senior year at university. Currently working 2 jobs, as a housekeeper at Marriott and as a billing and coding specialist at WorldCore Health." "That's enough, Freddie. Thank you. Prepare the car. Have Franklin take me to the airport, and you follow him to take the car back to the hangar lot." "Yes, boss. I'll be there in a couple of minutes," Freddie said, turning off the connection. Sophia stood with her hands on her hips. Her face expressed a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and curiosity. "Who the hell are you, and where did you get all this information about me?" she asked, raising her voice slightly. Jackson stood up and took the suitcase. Sofia Hernandez, you make about $70,000 a year before taxes, working 2 jobs and barely finding time to eat and sleep. Am I right? Sofia frowned, grabbed the phone, and quickly dialed the number at the reception. She said where she was and who she was with, then fell silent, nodded, and glanced at Jackson. A minute later, she hung up, still looking at him incredulously. I was told that Juanita is coming here with help. Jackson chuckled. No, she's already cleaning 3 rooms down the hall and hoping she doesn't get fired. And this won't happen because I won't tell the manager anything. Sophia looked at him carefully. You are a very smart and insightful person, Mr. Brown. Thank you for not complaining. I appreciate it. Jackson smiled. Sophia, how about we put our degree to good use and work 1 job and earn more than what we are earning now? Her face showed surprise. I don't know, Mr. Brown. I can't just quit my job, and I can't leave my cousin alone. Are you crazy? A voice came from behind. It was Juanita. She returned to check on Sophia. During this time, she managed to clean 3 rooms and now stood at the door, looking at her sister in bewilderment. Walking over to the bed, she sat down next to Sophia. Sophia, you deserve better than working as a maid. Please accept any job he offers. Don't worry about me. I can handle it just as I did before your help. Everything will be fine, cousin, she said, hugging Sophia. They hugged, and then both turned to Jackson, who had just come out of the bathroom with a cosmetic bag in his hands and continued to pack his suitcase. What will I do, Mr. Brown? Sophia asked, getting out of bed. You will study to become our executive accountant. Our current performer, Denise Holcomb, has announced plans to retire in the spring. I was going to start looking for a candidate after my vacation, but meeting you was a real stroke of luck. Sophia frowned. How do you know I'm right for the job? Jackson chuckled. You won't make it in business unless you learn to read people, he said, but then became thoughtful, his gaze distant. If I had that kind of insight in my personal life, I might not have to go on vacation right now to clear my head. There was an awkward pause. Jackson took a business card from his wallet and handed it to Sophia. American Network Security Systems, she read aloud as Juanita looked over her shoulder. Jackson zipped up his suitcase and placed it by the door. Then he sat down in a chair and checked his phone. He received a message that a car with a driver was already waiting below. Sofia Hernandez, you will earn $80,000 a year plus bonuses. You will start in 2 weeks from tomorrow. Notify both your companies so you can leave according to the rules. I expect all my employees to do the right thing, no matter the situation. Sophia and Juanita exchanged smiles. Now, my cheating wife signed the divorce papers this morning, so I'm going to spend a few days getting drunk and wishing I ever got married. My car is waiting. Goodbye, ladies. Jackson walked to the door and turned around. Welcome to American Network Security Systems. This will be the last place you have to work. Jackson walked down the corridor and entered the elevator. While he was going down, his thoughts wandered far away. Who should he choose, the beach bunny or the ski bunny? A year after the divorce. Jackson sat in the meeting and looked at the numbers on a white screen, which was shown by a PowerPoint projector. He didn't fully understand what was going on. Sitting opposite him was his business partner, Joseph. Jackson knew he needed to understand everything so he could explain it to current and future clients. Also present at the meeting were the company's tax lawyer, a business lawyer, an accountant, a criminal lawyer, 2 junior accounting staff, and 3 senior shift managers. It was their quarterly financial meeting. They discussed what the money was spent on, how it was spent, where it went. It also looked at how their financial plan compares to the beginning of the year, and what forecasts can be made based on past and current data. The meeting was moderated by Chief Accountant Sofia Hernandez. By the time her predecessor, Denise Holcomb, retired in the spring, Sophia had already earned the respect of everyone at American Network Security Systems. Jackson understood enough to realize that things were going great. Costs fell and profits increased. They had contracts with all the leading companies in 25 states, as well as with city and municipal governments. Their advertising budget was almost zero thanks to social media, word of mouth, and their reputation. Sophia was talking about clearing snow from the employee parking lot when Jackson noticed something about the numbers. "Miss Hernandez, there is an error in your calculations," he interrupted. "What? Seriously, I need to learn all this by next week," Joseph said, raising his head abruptly and stopping writing. "What do you mean, Mr. Brown?" asked Sophia. "Every year our employees receive a 2% salary increase. You didn't take this into account." "Where is it?" Jackson replied. "Yes, I told you so," Joseph exclaimed loudly, jumping up and raising his hands in the air. Jackson heard groans around the table. He looked and saw everyone taking out their wallets or reaching into their pockets. Sophia smiled until there was a loud thud on the table. Jackson turned around and looked at Joseph. "Come here, you big bear. I could kiss you right on the lips," Joseph said. Everyone at the table started laughing. Jackson noticed that everyone had put money on the table. Joseph stood up and began to walk around the table, collecting money. "What the hell is going on here, Joe?" Jackson asked. "I bet them that you would notice this error in the presentation today." Why might I not notice this?" Jackson asked. "Fine. Now that you collected money from everyone and proved that you are a strange dude with big eyes watching your best friend, which caused another laugh, let's figure out why these numbers are not taken into account," Sophia said, taking the situation into her own hands. The three senior shift leaders stood up and stepped forward. Sophia stepped aside. Allison, the second shift supervisor, spoke up. "Jackson, the $20,000 gift you gave to our entire staff last Christmas meant more to us than you can imagine." Allison cried as she pulled a piece of paper out of her folder. "This is a petition signed by all employees. We are waiving 2% annual salary increases for the next 3 years as a sign of gratitude. I speak on behalf of all those who signed this petition. If you do not accept our decision, we are ready to leave in protest after this meeting. We love working at American Network Security Systems and value you as our boss." Allison walked up to Jackson and handed him the petition. Jackson stood up, picked her up, and hugged Allison. She returned to her seat next to the other shift leaders. "Well, you guys have me cornered," Jackson said, causing another burst of laughter. Joseph walked up to Jackson, put his hand on his shoulder, and gave him a friendly hug. "On behalf of myself and Joseph, I accept this petition with gratitude. We couldn't have asked for better staff and people. We are blessed and grateful to have you working with us," Jackson said. Everyone in the room applauded. They then returned to business and ended the meeting. Jackson congratulated Sophia on her excellent presentation and her excellent work. When he shook her hand, she said, "Did you notice that Joseph didn't collect money from me?" "No, I didn't notice. I knew you would notice the mistake." "I will never doubt your big heart, Jackson," Sophia said, and left the meeting room. Jackson returned to his office and wrote a thank you note to all the employees. He expressed his touching and sincere gratitude for their sacrifice and hard work. Just as he hit send, Joseph walked into his office and sat down in front of his desk. "I admit, I like this new chair. It's much better than before," Joseph said, rubbing the armrests. "I hope you are going to declare your winnings to the tax authorities," Jackson joked. "How about I buy you a meat sandwich and we keep it a secret?" Joseph answered with a laugh. "Put it in my refrigerator, I'll eat it tomorrow," Jackson said. They looked at each other for a moment. "Today has proven again that you are the heart and soul of this company," Joseph said. "No, without you, we would have gone broke a long time ago, Joe. I don't know how to do this lunch and dinner thing with clients." "Jackson, did you hear what Allison said?" "I heard what she said. She said they like to work under you." "She meant both of us. It's just a phrase. I'm not jealous or offended, Jackson. It just reminded me that I couldn't have chosen a better person to do business with." Joseph stood up, took Jackson's coat, and handed it to him. Jackson stood up and put on his coat. Now you need to go home, have a light dinner, drink a lot of scotch, watch the Jackets game, and get a good night's sleep tomorrow. I'm going to go back to my apartment, get a good workout, eat what Sasha cooked, take a shower, and then watch the match," Jackson replied, putting on his coat. "Are you finally going to start something with her?" "No. She's a dietetics student at university, and I pay her to cook meals on weekdays. There can be nothing more between us. You need to start dating again, friend. Find someone to knock off the rust," Joseph said with a smile. Jackson patted him on the shoulder. "Everything in due time, Joe. So far, I'm fine." "Just go, Jackson," Joseph replied with a smile. As Jackson walked out, he thanked every employee he met and wished them a good evening. He walked out the new side exit into the parking lot and walked a few steps when one of the new guards called out to him. After Tara showed up unexpectedly in the parking lot next to Jackson's car last year, he and Joseph decided that no employee should be subjected to this in the future. Jackson wasn't angry at Tara at the time, but her unexpected visit irritated him, and he didn't want that to happen to his employees. Jackson walked up to the security booth. "How are you, Frank?" he asked, holding out his hand. "I'm a 56-year-old man. I make $45,000 a year to sit in an air-conditioned booth and watch TV. Living the dream, Jackson," Frank replied, shaking his hand. Jackson laughed. "Of course, this also adds to your police pension. Plus, no more gruesome crime scenes to see." "That's definitely a plus," Frank grinned. "So what happened, Frank?" "Your ex-wife came. I didn't let her in, but she asked me to pass this on," Frank said, holding out a white envelope. Jackson took the envelope and looked at it for a few seconds, wondering if he should touch that healed scar again. He had seen Tara only once since the divorce, on the wedding anniversary of their mutual friends, Bill and Patricia. They were polite to each other, and Tara revealed that she was still dating Dr. Myers, still living in their house, and doing well at work. She also tried to subtly find out if Jackson had someone new. At that party, Jackson only stayed for the cocktail portion, chatted with a few people, and left before dinner. Before leaving, he gave Bill and Patricia a 5-day luxury cruise to the Caribbean, knowing that they had long dreamed of it. Patricia was delighted, and Bill smiled and joked that he would definitely be rewarded by his wife for this gift. Now Jackson was again holding a message from Tara in his hands. He opened the envelope and began to read the letter. Jackson opened the envelope and began to read the letter. "Dear Jackson, I hope you are doing well and that you continue to make progress with Joseph. I thought you'd be pleased to know that Dr. Myers gave me the green light. A year of intensive therapy and medications made me a better person. I understand that what we had is in the past, but I would like to try to become your friend. My actions and inactions in the last months of our marriage were what they were, and while some of it was out of my control, other parts were entirely my responsibility. I can never apologize enough, and I will not insult you by trying to do it again in this letter. We had wonderful moments, and I hope you remember them sometimes. I'm asking you to meet me for dinner. Nothing more. I don't have any expectations. I just want to share this moment with you. This could have happened when we were married, but now I feel like this moment of healing belongs to you too. Call me in the next few days to give me an answer. My number and house number remain the same. Sincerely, Tara Brown." Jackson carefully folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and drove home. On the way, he debated whether he should agree to dinner with Tara. He had long ago forgiven her and no longer hated her. He didn't like her actions, but he didn't hate her as a person. Although at first, after her betrayal, he was full of rage. Jackson often found himself getting angry at complete strangers. He saw people passing on the street and began to wonder if they were cheating on their partners. Sometimes he wanted to hit a person he had never met before. He even watched TV shows and movies differently. If there was treason in the plot, he started screaming at the screen. He smashed several remote controls just to vent his anger. In the first months after the betrayal, he drank a lot. Balvenie, his favorite Scotch whiskey, became his solace. He started drinking as soon as he came home, often forgetting to have dinner. Alcohol helped him relax and forget the pain. At night, he simply fell into bed without taking off his clothes and fell asleep on top of the covers. Therapy and self-reflection helped him realize that the bottom of the bottle was not the best path to getting rid of anger and resentment. Gradually, he began to rebuild his life. When he got to his apartment, he parked in his spot, walked upstairs, and went inside. There, he was immediately enveloped in the scent of a bourbon pecan pie scented candle. He realized that Sasha, his kitchen assistant, had lit it while she was preparing food. After closing and locking the door, he hung his coat on the hook, placed the briefcase on the table nearby, and threw the keys into the bowl. He headed to the bedroom to change clothes. But when he opened the door, he saw Sophia lying on his bed, wearing only a smile. Jackson smiled back at her. "Take care of me now, Jackson." "I want this so much," Sophia said, looking into his eyes. They had sex. A few minutes later, lying next to him, Sophia smiled at him. "Well, it was a great surprise after a day of work," Jackson said, hugging her. "I'm glad you liked it." "It was just magical," she replied, kissing him on the cheek. "Go take a shower while I heat up dinner and we'll eat together," Sophia suggested. "Great plan," Jackson said, standing up. He went to the bathroom, enjoying the warmth of the shower that fell on him from the ceiling. After 15 minutes of waiting, he realized that Sophia had not joined him. Jackson came out, wrapped himself in a towel, and headed to the kitchen. There he found Sophia standing at the table. She was wearing his t-shirt and short shorts. She held an envelope from Tara in her hands, bringing it to her lips, and looked thoughtfully into space. Jackson froze, looking at her. She was incredibly beautiful, but he knew they had to discuss what she was holding in her hands. "I see you found Tara's letter," he said. Sophia turned her head towards him and smiled. "Yes, I found it." "It was lying on the table next to the bowl for the keys," she answered, still looking at him. Jackson sat down at the table. "Did you read it?" he asked. "Yes, I read it," Sophia admitted, sitting down next to him. "Okay," he answered. "Do you think this is something we should discuss together?" Sophia asked, looking into his eyes. To be continued. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss the next part of this story. She will be there very soon. The link to the sequel will be in the description of this video below. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.